Bem-vindos de volta. A gente está aqui na exposição Copa das Copas Cheer for Peace Expo. Agora a gente tem um convidado especial lá direto da Irlanda. Eles vão contar um pouquinho pra gente como que funciona a permacultura do lado de lá. O Davie também foi um dos primeiros, ele fez parte da primeira ecovila da Irlanda. Ele está acompanhado da Jillian, que também está engajada nesses movimentos de permacultura e vai contar pra gente um pouquinho. A gente vai então continuar a discussão no dia, que hoje o tema é permacultura. Eu estou aqui com o Duncan, que também é irlandês, trabalhou com eles juntamente em alguns movimentos, e ele vai falar, a gente vai fazer um debate aqui sobre o tema. So welcome, Dave. Can you hear me properly?
Just, yes.
So we're really thankful for your presence. Thank you very much. Cheer for Peace is trying to co-create this movement together with great people and initiatives like yourself. So we really appreciate your presence.
Okay, so we'll hand it over to you, Dave, just to let people know, for the English speakers who might be tuning in. So Davie's based in Ireland for a long time, involved with setting up lots of amazing initiatives and projects in Ireland over the years. Earlier on, just last hour, we watched some of the videos of the village, Ireland's first eco-village from Cloughjordan in Ireland, and also one of the shows that Cultivate helped bring out on the Power Down show, looking at transition initiatives and energy descent plans. So the people who've been tuning in have a bit of an idea of sort of projects that Davie has been involved in the past, but now he's going to speak about what's going on at the moment. I know that Davie and some other people were in the Permaculture conference that happened recently, and we're also going to hear from Jillian, who's been involved in some very interesting projects in working in permaculture initiatives in places like Palestine. So really looking forward to hearing what you guys have to tell us. And welcome to Brazil.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Hopefully the technology doesn't fail us. Maybe it already is.
No, it's good. It's all good.
So my name is Davie Phillip. I'm Scottish, living for the last 20 years in Ireland, and I'm very interested in how we build resilient communities that can weather the storms that are fast approaching, can cope with the challenges that we are facing, that we are in and we're facing, economic challenges, social challenges, and of course environmental challenges. How we build thriving communities that can do more than just survive, but can actually flourish. So that is my the work that I've been doing, really. Watched some films on Cloughjordan. This is now a 15-year-old project. It's an eco-village project, although we are more like an eco-neighbourhood. So we're connected to one of Ireland's oldest planned villages called Cloughjordan. It means stone of Jordan. And we are looking to demonstrate sustainability methodologies, practices from green building, natural building, renewable energy, permaculture. So we've got a number of things here. There is currently 53 houses now in the eco-village. We have planning for 130, so it's a big-scale eco-village project, and one that very much is integrating with an existing settlement. So it's a bit different from many of the other eco-villages that we've seen, but I hopefully we'll see more and more of these sort of communities. Duncan, which Power Down show did you watch?
The Transition, Pathways, Transition and Energy, the one that was on Vimeo.
Okay. So yeah, my work is about communicating and designing learning pathways. And so that Power Down show was a 10-part television show that I directed with the objective of being a learning object in a course. So each of those 20-minute shows, each of those 20-minute television shows were part of a module, a 10-module course, which we did. We have another film which I like a lot, which is called Surfing the Waves of Change. If you've not seen that one, Duncan, it's worth having a look.
Okay.
It uses the metaphor of surfing and board riding for community resilience. And it's a 7-minute animation that's fun and it's full of information that almost takes, it's like it starts conversations, if you like, that film. It's a film that we can show and get into the ins and outs of community resilience, social capital, and different transition approaches. So I like the medium of film. I like embedding little media clips and film clips into courses and learning. And so that's one of the things that I've done quite a lot of, is making TV and making films. Cultivate is a workers' co-op that I worked through since 1999. We used to run a centre, a large social centre in the cultural quarter of Dublin, where we had an eco shop and courses and all sorts of events. And we built a really thriving community of activists, of permaculturists, all sorts of people, and hosted conversations and events on all sorts of issues. A bit like what you're doing here in your social centre here. You know, building community, building the capacity of us to be more effective in our work, learning new ideas like resilience, but also courses on permaculture and these sort of things. So I think it's important that we have social spaces where we can meet, that we can build our capacity, and that we can develop our competencies in being more effective in change. We now are more than ever need to be good change agents, and yet the competencies to navigate through a very uncertain environment are very different from the competencies that we might have had 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So we need to be constantly learning, constantly developing our abilities, whether our focus is on action and protest, which is really important, or on demonstrating and showing example the sort of work and the sort of way of life that we need to embody now in our communities. So I'm going to say a little bit about our permaculture, European Permaculture Teachers Network, which we had 2 years that we've just finished at European Permaculture Convergence in Bulgaria just 2 weeks ago. So this EPT, European Permaculture Teachers Partnership, was a European funded project that brought 18 countries together across Europe in 7 places where we met for 5 days in each place. These were usually beautiful places. We went to your old hometown, Duncan, Barcelona, and went up to Masfranc up in north of Barcelona. And we went to a couple of social centres in Barcelona and gave presentations and talks. So the purpose of this partnership was to really, as permaculture teachers, explore how we best teach permaculture, or teach anything really. The legacy of permaculture teaching is to speak at the students, to be the expert at the top of the room, transmitting his expertise, and he usually is a he, his expertise to the students. Now that might have been good enough 40 years ago, but communities of practice, where we explore a topic and inquire into a topic. And so we only hold a very small part of what's been taught if we're just listening. You know, if we're participating, if we're actively constructing the knowledge together, I think it's more effective. If we have to step up to teach in section, that's the most effective way to learn, to have to do a presentation or to deliver a bit of training. So we were looking in this teachers network about how to improve how we deliver the learning, how to maintain the standards of permaculture, even how to define permaculture. So we moved from, or we have moved from permaculture when it started in the mid-70s in Australia as permanent agriculture, and it's moved, developed to permanent culture. But that word permanent isn't really what we're trying to do. We're trying to be regenerative and flexible, adaptive, resilient. Permanence isn't really what we're trying to achieve. So we're stuck with a term and a word which really needs to be expanded a little. So we've
lost connection. Okay, so we've just had another tech problem, so we'll try to sort it out. So hopefully people, hopefully everybody's catching all that. I'm aware that the audio is not the best quality, but hopefully people can hear. Later on we'll link to all of these different projects, and especially the EPT meeting that happened in Bulgaria, the other groups that Davie was mentioning in Barcelona. After this talk, by the way, we will be speaking with some of the groups from Barcelona. So we'll, at 3 o'clock we'll have that discussion with Ricard, which is one of the main drivers behind the Plan Énergétique Participatif, the Saint-Martin, which is the participative energy plan for Saint-Martin, which was one of the neighborhoods of Barcelona. So the barrios fit into the neighborhood together. So that's the first, like what we looked at earlier on in the videos, was the idea of the EDAP, the Energy Descent Action Plan. And this neighborhood is one of the first areas, definitely in Barcelona, possibly in all of Spain, to actually take the idea of looking into creating pathways for energy descent. So I know that Davie met some of the other guys who are involved in permaculture groups in Barcelona. It's the urban permaculture groups. There's Alfredo, who helped set that up a few years ago. That's doing really well, and lots of little projects are happening. We try to get him today, but just for tech reasons, it's not possible. But I'm hoping that with Davie we can keep going. No? Do we know?
Dave.
Davie, yeah?
Okay.
Hello?
There you are. Sorry, Duncan. That might be our side, not your side.
Okay. Okay, well we're connected again, so we'll just carry on. If we've more
Okay.
problems, we'll just deal with it.
Well, I was explaining some of the opportunities with or some of the objectives of the European Permaculture Teachers Network. So exploring how we better teach, and exploring, pushing the edge of permaculture, especially into social and organizational permaculture, which is what I'm doing my permaculture diploma on now. So using the same observations of patterns in nature to design systems that contain elements for healthy relationships. Normally we would do this on land projects, but we can use the same principles and design process in organizational design. So we really played around with that, both in our organization of our teachers partnership, where we used a system called Viable Systems Model, which is something for the last 6 years we've been applying in Clough-Jordan Eco-Village. The systems model is an organization technique based on whole systems, so it's like permaculture, that moves us away from command and control, with a small group telling the larger group what to do, and distributes responsibility, decision-making across the organization or across the community. So this is, I think, one of the things that permaculture could really help us deepen our understanding of this. There's other examples of things like theocracy, holocracy that are very similar. And I get excited about these things. I don't want to be in a community or an organization where I'm told what to do. And I want to be in an organization where there's cohesion and self-organization. You know, where we have a shared purpose and we can get on with the doing, making sure there's cohesion, making sure there's ways to avoid conflict, making sure we're effective, but not having to wait for the boss to tell us what's next. So I think there's a lot of learning. Whatever communities we're in, activist communities, local communities, and global communities, there's a lot of new thinking, I think, that could really help us have more impact in the work we're doing. So I'm excited about that permaculture. So other things that the Permaculture Teachers Partnership looked at as well was standards. The standards of a permaculture design certificate, which is the 72-hour basic introduction, usually takes up to 10 days to 2 weeks. And the permaculture diploma, which is different across Europe. Could we start to think about some harmonization in ways that, you know, not that it makes the same across Europe, but at least there's a standard there. Standard that if you've got a permaculture diploma, you know that if you got it in Europe, that you've got a good diploma. So, I mean, these are the sort of things I'm working on. I don't know how you want to do it. It might be good to ask questions and then go into areas that you're interested in. Or, you know, I could speak for a little bit more and then hand over to Jillian, and she could give you a bit more on some of her work, especially in communities that are difficult.
Yeah, maybe we'll, if we pass over to Jillian, and then after the two presentations, we can open it up and finish the end section with just a general discussion.
Okay, perfect. So Jillian, you're going to do a little bit. Yeah, I've got the camera.
Okay. Hello there.
Hey, hello.
Hi. So I guess, like to pick up on a couple of things that Davie was speaking about, and I could tell you about my history, and that's briefly that I've been involved with teaching permaculture over almost 20 years now. I'm Canadian, and I founded and ran a not-for-profit that was based in Toronto called the Sustainable Living Network. And the intention of it was to serve as an overarching clearinghouse type of an organization, because people were approaching me about permaculture, organic growing, biodynamics, natural building, renewable energy, alternative wastewater treatment, community housing, co-housing, eco-villages, etc. And really I saw it more or less as not maybe the same thing, but very highly interrelated, and had a vision of really all these pieces working together in a functional whole. And that's how I understand and I teach permaculture. Historically, permaculture had a very strong focus on not only the biophysical landscape, but agriculture, so permanent agriculture, permaculture. But you can also understand it as permanent culture. And indeed, from the beginning, it was taught within that frame, but the emphasis was on biophysical systems like geology, soil, climate, perennial polycultures, etc., which included building and energy, but was much more focused on the plant. And as Davie was mentioning, over the decades that permaculture has been being used, we've been, quote unquote, evolving to the point where we are beginning to see the need and actually the possibility of applying permaculture thinking to human ecosystems. And indeed, for myself, I have people who approach me complaining about how their designs didn't work, and almost invariably the reason for that is that they haven't sufficiently taken into account the human landscape as part of their design. So I think that we're at quite a turning point, and we have more and more people who are becoming individually more and more aware, but also, and where it gets more complex, is us as communities becoming more.
Hello? Hello? We've lost the connection. Yeah, we've lost the connection again. So hopefully we're gonna, sorry now about these technical problems that we've had. Now that all sounds very interesting, what Jillian is talking about. It's some of the areas that we've been discussing over the last few days as well, about these interactions between people. And hopefully we can open up this discussion. So I'm not sure exactly. Do we know if it's from Ireland or is it different?
It doesn't say.
Okay, so we don't know where the problem is. But anyway, hopefully it'll sort out and we'll get to keep this discussion going. So, so while we're waiting, so just want to like it. Okay, so well, this theme of the
Making a living being urban farmers.
Hello, hello. Are you there?
Yes.
Hello, yeah. We lost the connection for the last 2 minutes, so we've just got you back now.
Okay. Well, I was on a roll, so
yeah, you were, and we were enjoying it. You got to the human landscape, the interaction of the human landscape.
Well, thank goodness we got there.
But you were doing great. Really, keep it rolling.
That's essentially the crux of the matter, is that with all good intentions, I think traditionally permaculturalists were much more biophysical landscape of soil and geology and plants, and had very little consideration for the humans in the landscape. So I think that we're very much at a point of transition where we're starting to embrace much more consciousness in terms of self-awareness, awareness of other, but then also this collective consciousness as we come together as individuals and endeavor to function as a whole in terms of community projects. You can really be constrained by money and other quite salient resources, but get the most constrained is in our interpersonal relationship. Mm-hmm. So one of the strong aspects of my work is supporting people to be able to see and understand themselves better, understand the other, and to develop much greater skill set of being able to work together productively. So I'm sorry, because I talked along in my own universe for 2 minutes, I'm not quite sure what I said and didn't say anymore.
We're with you. You got right back onto it from where you left us.
Okay. I think there was some gems that kind of got not repeated there, but well, that's the way the cookie bounces on the internet landscape. So it would be good to know a little bit more about your interests, of what you'd like from us, what kind of contact and connection you'd like from us in this call, what you think the people listening might be interested to, because Davie and I both have a wide range of activities and experiences, and we'd love to get some direction from you, maybe some questions.
Okay, so basically, we've set up this is a Cheer for Peace movement, and it's based in Curitiba in Brazil. So while the World Cup was on, we did 2 events where we went to 2 of the major favelas, the shanty towns, slum communities called favelas here in Brazil. So it was a charity project to support there, to bring things there. So that was kind of the first step of this project. The second step, which is where we are now, is trying to report to the wider communities, the world, what we did there, what happened, what sort of discussion started to happen. So that's what we're doing now, is this 2-week project of this art exhibition, and we got the go-ahead to open it up and to make it a dynamic art exhibition, whereby we tried to widen the discussion that we already started by trying to find more ideas or to learn more about the things we talked about during our trips, our events in the favelas. So basically we're trying to make connections with wider communities, looking at different ideas in the hope that from this short moment that we can build on it. So with that, we've been looking at, today specifically has been looking at the theme, because each day is theme, of permaculture. So we had a local guy working on permaculture in Curitiba talking about projects here. A while ago, 2 hours ago, we heard from another Canadian actually living in Sweden, working in Stockholm and about the urban districts in Stockholm. We showed some videos about the Clock Jordan and some of the Cultivate videos. Later on, we're hearing from people from Barcelona, some of the groups I was working with in the past. So and we also showed some of the videos of Bill McDonough talking about the idea of eco-cities. So we've been looking today at the idea of scale, the idea of trying to look at processes of human communities and seeing how it works, or learning about some of the experiences from different scales. So it's one of the things that possibly we could look at at this phone call. Hello? Yeah?
Yeah, we're okay.
And Paloma?
Yeah. So pretty much the idea of bringing all these initiatives together from all over the world is we're opening a window of future, where we're looking into opportunities and ideas, and then also at problems and solutions that we can identify in communities in Brazil, so in marginalized communities, but they were already being solutionated outside of Brazil. And how can we? Yeah.
Okay, so we've lost the connection again. So between us, whatever if we can identify as like any targets that we want to get from this call, like if it's specific details about certain ideas. Like I'd love to hear about. She's been working in Palestine and the idea of different communities. Hello, yeah? We got connected?
So, as I was saying, the most interesting part for us is we want to co-create. We opened the community, so they are ready to. We did that first contact where we did a dynamic with the kids. We got more than 400 people mobilized. And then now is the time where we can start learning what's their reality and how can we apply some solutions that you guys maybe can bring it into to our wall of the future. So we would love to maybe hear some examples, especially I guess from Palestine that you guys have been working with, but a little bit of what I understood, and even from Ireland that might be considerable to apply here in Brazil.
Okay, well, maybe I'll just say a few things about Ireland, and then Jillian could say something about Palestine. Scale is one of the things that we were motivated to scale up sort of sustainability responses. And in permaculture, we say one of the principles is to value the marginal. We wanted to bring what was into the center, so that people in rural Ireland could accept renewable energy, eco-design, sustainability, organic agriculture. So one of our objectives was to build an eco-village at scale, not maybe 10 houses in a field on its own somewhere, maintaining the sort of fringe and marginal aspects of a lot of these ideas and technologies, but bring them right in to the mainstream. The other thing I liked about the village scale, is that it can be scaled up. So Gandhi and Schumacher talked a lot about the village scale, but then to scale up to cities, a healthy city or a sustainable city of villages, small precincts, provinces within the city, of the same
Hello? Hello? Lost the connection again. So just explain, so just in case people haven't seen the videos around, where the Clough-Jordan is located is beside an existing, quite a small little town in Ireland, an old market town. And so it was an existing infrastructure that was there for a long time, and they connected onto it. So coming from this town, that's where the village is. So, and because in Ireland there was the culture of villages and towns dying because people were moving out of the villages, out of the towns, and into the city. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hi, Davie, can you hear us?
Hello? Hello? No, we've lost it again. So, so trying to almost like to re-support or to give like a new wave of life to an already existent infrastructure. So some of what they mentioned there was the idea of in the past a lot of these eco-communities, if you want to call them that, have happened in pure isolation. It's been intentional communities far away, living in their own little area. Hello, yeah, we're back.
Okay, so the importance of scale from a sociological, anthropological point of view, if we're trying to have healthy communities, we're not going to do that with 100, 200 people. You know, have a thriving local economy, the diversity of skill sets, you know, we need a scale that we can move goods and services around, and we think the minimum is probably, well, the research minimum is 1,000. But then Dunbar's magic number of 150, that you probably want precincts or smaller clusters within our village of about 150 people. It's a magic number because from a psychological point of view, that's the amount of people who probably know quite their names and a bit about them. And once you get past that, it gets a little bit more difficult to maintain those relationships. This is Mondragon Co-op, which is a federation of co-ops in the Basque Country in Spain. When they get to the size of 150 in the cooperative, they spin off another cooperative, you know, to keep it at that human scale where we can know each other, have good quality relationships, and be able to be empowered to work together. But we still need that scale, probably 1,000, and these numbers probably seem tiny compared to what you're dealing with in Brazil, but still, it's like fractals in nature. You know, we work at different scales. So our project, and I'll finish here, and Jillian come back in now about Palestine, but our project really was trying to scale up sustainable responses and resilience in rural Ireland, a very traditional community. And our success has been that that community now see themselves as Ireland's eco-community, the whole village of Jordan, not just the eco-village. They see themselves now as becoming more knowledgeable and people coming to visit and their houses have been retrofitted. So they just feel it's starting to normalize or mainstream sustainability, and that was our objective. So I'll let Jillian come in now. We can take some questions. Are we still okay? You can still hear us?
Yeah, we're doing great. Doing great.
Okay, here's Jillian. We've got about 20 minutes, so maybe leave some time for questions. But Jillian.
Hi again. So I'm a little sensitive about speaking about Palestine because it's not the forefront of my activity. I did spend 3 or 4 months there last year, and part of the reason I went was to familiarize myself with a part of the world that's played such a visual role for us, and not just a visual role, but it's very much in the news, and I felt as a global activist that it behooved me to get myself over there and become more acquainted with the history and understanding. So I spent quite a bit of time in the West Bank and at 2 different points in time last year, and I led 2 different permaculture courses, one of them with Starhawk in the fall, and it was a very special experience, and I think that perhaps there are some similarities between the favelas, the situation in the favelas, and the conditions in the West Bank. in that there is often not very good access to water and a lot of other restrictions in the landscape that really impede people from being able to manifest structures and other systems to take care of their basic needs. And there is high density in some areas, and one of the patterns is that a lot of the people who were traditionally nomadic have been, for one reason or another, now becoming sedentary and setting up more permanent structures when they're not used to it. And indeed, they don't necessarily always have a very good skill set because it's not been part of how they've been living. But even if they're moving into setting up houses, they're often impeded from setting up water and waste systems and moving into agriculture. So in terms of ways of looking at this, connected with scale, I was going to also throw in that the Gilmans, who are commissioned by the people who started the Global Eco-Village Network organization 20 years ago, the Gaia Foundation, they, before that, commissioned the Gilmans from the Context Institute in the northwest of the United States to do a study, and the number that they came up with for an eco-village was 250 people. So there's obviously nodes or different sizes that relate to different needs or functions, but like any natural system, you're going to have scales within scales within scales. And I think good design is always looking through that lens of scales within scales within scales. So you've got a family cluster within maybe a family compound, which is within a street or a smaller neighborhood, which is within a larger neighborhood, etc. It goes right up through the regional scale and beyond. But one of the things that, another rubric that we can use to look at this situation is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And there's many more people who are much more acquainted with quote-unquote aid work that are used to coming in and doing a triage or a base assessment of what are the basic needs. And that often turns around water and many aspects of sanitation. So drinking water and water for cleansing, and water for cooking, and also waste. And the first and foremost of that is our human waste. And one of the strong aspects of permaculture is looking at turning what we would normally regard as a waste into a resource. So one of the main loops that we can close in our human landscape is beginning to reconnect with human waste as a resource. And obviously there's reasons why that we've shunned that, because it can be a vector for disease. But when it's not dealt with well, it's definitely a vector for disease, which is one of the situations we find in favelas, where there's too much proximity between human waste and the limited water supply that there is. So I would think that starting there, that would give a good foundation. Obviously, there's shelter and energy of its different kinds, different needs. But it's a very complex situation to be coming into a people's landscape that is already set up patterns of trying to live there. And the social process, even though you mean well, of coming into that type of environment is extremely sensitive and needs to be handled well. And I think that there's many points of social contact that probably need to be pursued so that you can be set up to be able to deliver or make the type of contact that could potentially turn into the type of results that you hope for.
Sounds great. And one of the...
Gives me that time.
Sorry?
Now, there's quite a bit there, Duncan. It'd be great now to maybe just see where people want to go, or where we could maybe get into more of a conversation or some questions.
Any questions from
Traduz para mim? Sim. Qual o segredo para botar uma chispa para começar uma cidade ser transicionista? Chispa, tipo primeiro passo? Primeiro passo. Uma centelha seria. Uma centelhinha, sim. So one of the questions is, what would be the first step to start a eco-village or a sustainable community like that?
have to spark it off?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's two approaches. There's the intentional community approach, where you have an intention, a bit of a vision, or there's the transition community approach, where you're looking to build the resilience of an existing community. So they both have different challenges. In some ways, the intentional community and attracting people to build that community, the resources, the land we need to build it, might in some ways be easier and in many ways be more difficult. A transition community where we're looking at our existing settlements, our existing neighbourhoods, and trying to bring people in to get them to step up, to take on a retrofit of our buildings or setting up a farm may be easier, but they both have challenges. But the first step really is to, I suppose, have a vision, be able to communicate that vision and build the momentum of the community and building the people into that community. First steps really.
Well, I guess it depends on what scope or scale and existing fabric of community you have. The pattern that we've been seeing with permaculture and eco-villages, you have most of them that have been starting out in rural areas in what we would call a greenfield site, a site that hasn't been previously developed. But as we've been getting more experienced, we're now moving more to suburban but moreover urban environments. And very few of those are greenfield developments. They're usually a retrofit of an existing building or inhabiting what we would call a brownfield, which is a previously inhabited, maybe industrial site. Many of them that are at the fringes of, in North America and Europe, we have cities that used to be industrially focused that have been moving away from their industrial infrastructure. And you have a lot of former industrial properties that are now open to being retrofitted, like many of the docklands. So it really depends on your context, and it depends on the socioeconomic frame. As pioneers, many of the people who have come to this from an intellectual and emotional perspective of being relatively well-off, well-educated people that would like to make more contact with a lot of the niceties, the social aspects of living in community together. And then you have other people, like we were just touching on a few minutes ago, who, you know, for whom that is not their existence at all, and they're just trying to survive. So in terms of your question, how to start, I would ask, you know, for what purpose, or, you know, which clientele, which group of people that you're working with. But good permaculture design is always extremely sensitive to whoever your quote-unquote client group is, and that often is yourself. Often in permaculture, you're working with people who want to build their dream eco-home or their dream eco-village, and we bring them along with us and educate them as part of the design so that they can be resources to other people in the future. Because indeed, many of these places become de facto education centers that receive hundreds, if not thousands, of people who come to learn.
Cheer for Peace, going into these communities, these favelas in Brazil, one of our main focus is to bring equality. And we see, especially when the Brazilian that gave the first talk today, he was showing us all the sides of permaculture, that flower, I don't know how to say that thing in English. Diagram. And you see a lot of balance and equality into it. How do you guys do this, like stakeholders getting together, the community, to get involved? Do you see a pattern between the communities you guys work with?
I think this is one of the biggest challenges. A lot of times now in the West or over here in Europe, people are so stuck in front of their television sets that they can't get involved, they can't step up, they can't engage in community life, and they've no interest in that. And so the challenge is to make it exciting or interesting. No one wants to go to another meeting, but maybe they'd like to go to a party or to see a film. So it's being creative in how we reach out and how we invite people in. So the quality of the call or the quality of the invite is really important. When we started the eco-village and we moved to Jordan, a very traditional rural community, we took a year to do a community consultation process. So we didn't just parachute in and build an eco-village. We spent a long time working with the schools, working with the local community, allowing them to get to know us, what we're trying to do, before we even apply for planning. So I think there's a number of things to do, but we have to consider how to make it easy for people to step into this work or step up to get involved. And that can be really challenging, especially here when our culture is so consumer focused. You know, it's just what we buy and what we have, and that is our status, not really the quality of the work we're doing or our participation in our neighborhoods. So it's a difficult one.
And with that, David, because obviously from knowing you and being involved in things over the years back in Ireland, and being back and forth over the years that I was in Barcelona, this is one of the things that strikes me as being one of the keys to making this change. Because, like, my own family coming from West Clare and seeing, like, you know, Ennis Diamond in West Clare, where there's a few people trying to make transition type movements, but that there's so much resistance to it. So even before the time of the crisis, that there was resistance to, let's say, what they call, you know, these hippies coming with their fancy ideas. That was the kind of attitude that the rural community seemed to have against, you know, whether it's people from outside or whether it's Irish people or Dublin people coming, that there's all these dynamic tensions that exist. So, but one of the things that I was wondering and I was hoping for was that when the crisis started to really kick in, the economic crisis started to kick in, and suddenly, you know, people's comfort zones were pulled from under them, and people were struggling and in difficult situations, just trying to make ends meet. I had a great hope that suddenly there was going to be a massive shift in Irish culture, where people feeling the effects of the crisis would start to look at things like transition and all the things that you guys have been doing for so long as being practical solutions to assist. So, for example, if it's farming communities trying to find new ways to use their land so that it assists them economically. But I don't think that there has been, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think there has been a major opening to these strange people with their strange ideas. Maybe that just it is a question of time, like you pointed out, that it needs to be far longer, the engagement process. But that was you going to Cloughjordan and saying, hey, we'd like to set up here. So that's what I'd like to hear a little bit more about, because I'm not sure, but I think that what you're talking about with the social side of permaculture, I think that's what it is. It's trying to understand other people's dynamics and work with them so that you can work together.
So there's two things there. There's having empathy where others are at, and there's working with values. Generally, when we, as the greenies, the lefties, the hippies, our values are not in sync with the maybe traditional values or the modern values of consumption. And so when a community that maybe holds traditional values see these outsiders coming in holding different values, there can be a clash there. So in some ways we need to frame our work or our message and making sure it resonates with the values that are held in that community. And it's quite easy to do. In a traditional community, they don't like change. So when we started and we were talking about sustainability, it meant huge change. But when we started talking about let's build thriving communities that can be resilient to change, it didn't mean that we were imposing change. It meant we were getting ready to cope with change. And especially after 2008, where we had the worst economic downturn, but at the same time, the worst freeze and the worst floods the country had ever experienced, when you started talking to traditional communities about resilience as communities, how do we look after ourselves? How do we work better together? How do we get more jobs in this area? How do we produce more livelihoods and keep youth here? It's a different set of questions than how do we deal with climate change or peak oil, which doesn't resonate. But the response is probably the same, whether we're trying to strengthen a local economy or make a community socially healthy. So it's a lot about values for me, really, that we need to work with the way that we frame our message to activate values or resonate with the values that the communities we want to work in hold. That's, I think, a big part.
I think that's definitely something that we can work on here. You know, like I'm saying, this is as a gringo, as a foreigner who's just arrived here in Brazil, but working with people who are Brazilian and engaged in this project, because it's one thing that's really struck me here is that there's a serious lack of connection here between all the different societies in Brazil. You know, you've got a very polarized communities between, as I see it, between people living in favelas who get certain names put on them through, especially through the mainstream media, and then also, let's say, the ultra rich community in Brazil that will spend no time or have no wish to engage with the people in the favelas. So I think it's an interesting thing. It's about how we understand each other, and like I think one of the keys to that is trying to open up in a very soft, gentle way, trying to open up your kind of neutral spaces or neutral processes whereby different people can come together and start to get to know each other and start to understand each other a little bit more and understand what those values are, and from that,
what I've come to realize, Duncan, is that conversation is the unit of transformation. It's a Peter Block quote. But if we can engage people in conversations, we break down perceived barriers, we start to share, our experience, and it's not a lecture, it's not a presentation, it's just a conversation.
Exactly.
I'd like to chime in on this note. I was alluding to it earlier. To pick up on your phrase of a gringo coming down here, etc. I think it's very important for us to remain as conscious, not just remain, but grow into increasing consciousness as being a quote-unquote gringo that arrives in a different place. And one of the meta-level frames or skills that I use is just staying as real and honest and humble as I can, and meeting people heart to heart and inquiring if there's a way that I can help. And often that is kind of not a slow thing, but I don't just rock up and say, how can I help? But it's more making contact, and the ways in which I can help can evolve. And granted, I'm a professional and I show up with a toolkit, and I'm not usually wandering aimlessly, but I think that the social landscape and understanding we're doing the best we can, and one of the best tools that we have is to just be open and honest and upfront about who we are and where we come from and why we're motivated, and to stay connected with continuing to unpack that, because there's a lot of people who do activist work in the world who I don't think have really done much work in understanding why they're doing what they're doing, and being more conscious about why we're drawn to do what we're doing really helps to have softer and more appropriate ways of integrating well with the people you're ostensibly trying to help.
Duncan, we've only got a minute. We've got Mark Boyle, the moneyless man, here tonight.
Excellent.
So it's the way we can start to wrap up.
Yeah, okay. Well, listen, thank you very much for making the time to speak with us, because I know you're busy there, and we wish you all the best. I think it's been very, very helpful for us here to hear a little bit. And hopefully we can build on this in the future now, so we can see you again now. So
thank you very much, Dave and Julie, for being a part of all this. We hope to hear back from you guys soon. You guys are both welcome to come down in Brazil. We will be working and developing these communities until the Olympics and so on. And it will be a pleasure for us to have you here. Thanks again. It was really nice of you to connect with us. Cheer for peace.
So this is the. So thank you very much, and best of luck to all your
Bravo.
projects. So,